Welcome back to ABA Generalized. You have Anne and Erica again. Unfortunately, G is away, so we do not have her lovely face on here today. But Anne and I are going to talk a little bit about something we have to do pretty frequently, especially when we have new clients or in general, at least on my end, I have to do it yearly. It's called FBAs, so functional behavior assessments analysis. I think like they go interchangeably, right? Analysis and
Functional
assessment.
behavior. Well, the FAs are functional analysis and
Yeah,
FBAs functional behavior. Sure.
analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I said assessment. I
No,
think
I
like
think it is assessment. Functional behavior. Oh, no, it's analysis. I don't
analysis.
know. Does it really, the acronyms, can we not?
I don't have any of my books that tell me what the acronyms actually mean. So this is all going based upon memory at this point. But no, it's definitely analysis, functional behavior analysis. So what is an FBA, you might ask? Well, it is when you combine data.
Assessment. It's assessment.
It is assessment, so I got it right at first. Are you
Yeah.
sure?
Yes.
Huh. Well, okay. Good thing I
For
don't
some reason, there's an Amazon FBA, and I don't know what that is, but that's not what we're talking about.
like
Just to
Amazon
be
as in
clear.
like the Amazon or like you buy things off of it.
No, like you like you buy things off of Amazon, but
So you're
no,
not going to
the
the
other
you're not going to the Amazon forests.
no, not the FBA we're talking about. No, it's functional behavior assessment. Wow, we are really you should really trust us and our knowledge.
Listen, listen, first of all, I forgot to start a timer. So, G, if you're listening, please don't kill us. Um, let's see. Okay. Well, started now. Anyways, listen, it's been almost 4 years for me since I sat for the exam and do not plan to ever sit for an exam. Wow, sit for it again. So, I mean, I know what they mean and I know what like we need to do with it. So that's all that really matters.
That's all that matters.
I hope. I don't know. Anywho's, so functional behavior assessment. So we are literally taking our ABC data, which we had previously talked about. We are also taking any sort of parent interviews, and we're doing these direct observations mixed with our indirect observations. So, and do you want to kind of talk about what any of that means?
Yes, so the wow.
Doing great today.
We the direct observation um you can do while you're collecting ABC data. So that means that you are directly observing the client or the student. You are in their environment. You are not really interfering or putting any interventions in place at this time. So as natural as possible, you're sitting back, I say I'm like in disguise. Like when I'm in
Incognito.
schools, I'm just creepily following students around and not talking to them. And meanwhile, they're like, this weird lady's following me. And then at the end of the observations, I'm like, hey, you've probably seen me. I've been sitting in all your classes. And here is why.
That's funny. I've gotten
Yeah.
asked before too, like, because obviously, like, insurance wise, right? Like, I go to home community and schools. I'll go into a school. This is one that's coming to my mind. I went to a school and we had pretended, Lindsay and I actually pretended that we were just checking out the school and the classrooms to see, like, if we wanted to send our kids there. Neither of us have kids. And so we sat in the back of the classroom and we were just taking some ABC data because the kiddo didn't know who we were. We didn't want the whole class to be like, oh, why are you watching us? And they were like an older kiddo. So we knew that if we had said anything different than that, they would be like, it would just kind of like blow our cover. And it would also be very, it wouldn't be helping with the client's dignity. So just trying to keep that intact as well. And so we were just sitting back there. And then the one kiddo in the classroom turns to us and goes, so are you here for like so and so? And we were like, no, 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 we're just here to observe in general. We want to see what your classes are all about. And then client comes up and is like, you're here for me. Grandma told me. And I was like, no, no.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be really covert sometimes.
It is. Yeah, like I have students who I'm not observing come up and they're like, "Who are you? Are you a sub?" Like that's what I usually get. Like especially with the olders, "Are you a sub?" And I'm like, "Nope. Sorry, your teacher's here." And then the like whoever I'm observing never approaches me and is like, "Why are you here? Are you here for me?" It's always other students who are like, "What are you doing here?
Mhm.
Who are you?" Asking me a million questions, and I'm like, I just work for the school. Carry on.
I think like even just doing any sort of direct assessment or direct observation in a home is also like extremely difficult. So like school's hard as well because like you're trying to be covert. You're trying to make sure that like you're being incognito, kind of like a spy almost, right?
Like
Or
I feel like a spy. I text you and you all the time. I'm like, I'm being a spy today.
yes. And like that's, I mean, I feel like it's hard to do. I mean, you can't do it at homes because you're going into the home already and you're literally a new person working directly with the kid. And you're probably
Yeah.
running another assessment too to kind of, um, not trigger the behaviors, but you want to look for what's the cause of the behaviors, right? So like we had talked about previously, our ABC data and we kind of determine based upon that what the functions of the behaviors are. Also, another previous episode, the four functions of behavior. Um, I think are they in the same episode? I can't remember.
Uh,
I feel like they're two separate episodes.
I think they're two separate episodes.
Yeah. So, yeah, just like talking about in general, looking at your ABC data and doing that direct observation in the home is a lot harder, to be incognito, whereas Anne can be
Mhm.
literally probably put some sunglasses on and hide.
Exactly what I do. Exactly. But sometimes when I go into classes, especially if I need to observe different classes with different teachers, um, like I'll ask the teacher, like, where's the best place to sit? And sometimes they'll put me directly behind the student, and I'm like, this is too obvious.
Easily.
It's fine because then I can see things that the teachers aren't seeing, like if they're on their phones
Or if they're
and
just
it like,
scribbling.
yeah, and or if they're like what they're saying under their breath, like that the teachers can't catch. And I'm like, oh, did you hear they said this, this, and this? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, they did. So those are things that I can catch if I'm directly behind them. Otherwise, um, I might be sitting not not as close and won't be catching those little things that
Yeah.
are meaningful.
Well, and then I don't know about you, Anne, but in the insurance world, we do our parent interviews before we do any observations. So any teacher and parent rating scales we try and send out or work directly with the families to figure out what are the behaviors that you are concerned about, right? So this way, when we do go and do that direct observation, we can have a better eye on what we're looking for because there may be some things that we're just like, oh, I don't ever see that. Or like, are you sure you've never seen this one? Or is this kind of like what you're trying to explain when you do go and look at that ABC data? So, yeah, and I don't know if you have to do that beforehand or
uh,
what your process is.
there's not a specific order. I will try to contact the parents or caregivers early on. So in schools, we have 60 days to complete the FBA process. And sometimes it can be really hard. You might not hear back from the parents. So the earlier you attempt to reach out to them, the better. So it'll usually be like on Zoom or just a phone call, or I've like just emailed the questions and they'll fill it out and send back to me. So I've done all those different modalities, I guess you could say. Or if I don't get to interview them before the FBA is complete and before the meeting, I'll bring it up in the meeting and say, hey, like I tried to contact you, like, and like, everything's documented in the finished report. Would you, and then ask, like, would you have time after the meeting to do the parent interview part? And then if the student's old enough, interviewing them directly too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to see what their input is as well is super important. So like I have a older kiddo who can express their wants and needs and like, really is very in tune with themselves. And I've specifically said, hey, bud, what is there something that you want to decrease or get better about? Is there anything in terms of behaviors that you find annoying that you do, right? Like, is there anything that we can try and help you with?
Mm-hmm.
And then once again, like conducting those parent interviews, which is like the QABF, the FAST, the MAS. They're all different types of rating scales, to be honest. Cannot recall what. I could probably pull it up because I have copies of it. But
the QABF is the questions about behavior function. That's what we use here a lot. I know at my previous company we used the FAST lot, which is you would, it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of like, what behaviors are you seeing? And just like 20-ish questions of like, do you think they're in pain? Do you think it's for attention? Like, are they doing it when they're hungry? Are they doing it when they're tired? Stuff like that to determine, what the function is perceived as. And also like how I was talking about, I just thought of this, how I was talking about interviewing the students or the clients themselves. Like I'll interview them for the reinforcer inventory to see like, what do you earn at home? Like, do you have chores? Do you, what do you do at home? What do you earn? And then like, if that's possible to earn like in a school setting.
yeah. And like the functional behavior assessment is the perfect time to do any sort of reinforcement preference assessments. There we go. Any sort of preference assessments. So along with your direct observation, with your ABC data, and probably like working through some sort of protocol of like if you're doing peak or if you're doing VB map or if you're doing the AFOs, the ABLs, like if you're doing any of those, you're most likely also looking for reinforcers that the kiddo will enjoy, or the person, right? The adult, depending on the age that you're working on. And then you work through a preference assessment, and then you're even doing preference assessments later. So as you've probably listened to our previous episodes. I am really having a hard time talking today, and I don't know why. So I really apologize. But we do have a preference assessment
with
Janae, an episode. It's wonderful. Go listen if you have not already. But we kind of have been building up until this FBA stuff. So a lot of the things that we're talking about today really do pertain to previous episodes as well. So if you have not listened to any of those episodes, go back and listen and then come back. Anyways, so the FBA, right? We have all of those components, and then we're analyzing all of the data together. We're using the 4 functions of behaviors to assist in understanding what is actually going on and how we can, create those antecedent and consequence strategies to better help this person that we're working with. And so Anne and I have really different experiences at this point in time. I mean, we both work together as insurance, but she is the only one between the two of us who has been working in a school that's not contracted. So she has worked in a school where she works full time. I don't know why I said works like 5 times there, but I need more coffee. Anyways, do you want to start so that I can like my brain
take a break, drink, you're glitching, I think.
Sure. I'll blame the power washing this morning on my glitch.
Yeah, so the FBA process in schools, typically we have 60 days. Now, if an FBA is requested towards the end of the school year, it's gonna go into the next school year. So that timeline is a little wonky. but it's doable. So you set up your interview with the parents or caregivers. So yeah, start that early on. If you are planning to interview the student, I would recommend waiting until you get all your observations afterwards, so you don't skew your observations, right? So you're not going to be like, hey, you're going to be seeing me, and I want to interview you. This is why. So
Reactivity.
there it is. See, like I know all of these, but it's the terminology, because you don't use the terminology in a school setting, or even with parents. It's yeah, it's solely for exam purposes. Anyway, so you do your direct observations. Typically, I have been working with the older students, so I try my best to observe them in every class. You know, they're going to have different teachers, different classes, more than the littles. So I want to see if there are differences between classes, between teachers, you know, and usually there are. And even during unstructured times, so like lunch, after school, if possible, or even in like extracurricular activities, you know, and you can get some of that information beforehand if you interview the caregivers before, like, oh, you know, like we don't see any behaviors during this time, even like interviewing the teachers. And if they're like, you know, I really need you to go observe this class, or like talking to the case manager who might know them a little bit better. And then you also want to look at all of their past IEPs. You want to look at any past FBAs. You want to look at their behavior history. You want to look at any incidents, you know, like have they been suspended in the past? Like, have they, I don't want to say gotten in trouble, but like, yeah.
I mean, for lack of better words, I'm sure like there's probably a better way to say it, but I get what you mean. Like to look at just their history as a
Just
whole.
like yeah, like any uh what's it called?
Record review.
Yeah, a record. There you go. That's it. Record review. You want to look. You want to look at their school record.
I think looking like working in a school is really taking away a lot of your terminology. Oh my goodness, girl.
I would love to blame it on working in schools, but that's not it. It's just my brain. If I'm not saying it, you know, in daily, I can't even speak like outside of ABA terminology. So what makes you think I can? Yeah, yep. So now I'm glitching.
I was gonna ask you a question. So in terms of like you said that if someone asks for an FBA to be completed at the end of the school year, you do it, it rolls over to the beginning of the school year, correct? Now, what if the kiddo is going to ESY? Do you typically do I mean, I feel like it's kind of like setting them up for failure for like an FBA that's not as accurate because they're probably with a different group of kids. They're probably getting a different teacher. It's different structure. It's half days. It doesn't look the same. So you're probably not doing
So
it
you don't,
summer.
no,
Do you collect any
no,
data?
not, there's data being collected in ESY, but not for FBA.
Got you.
Like if it's in an IEP goal, then there's data being collected. But no, generally speaking, because this has come up several times, no, the short answer is not that I'm aware.
I mean, it makes sense because like to not do one, right, during the summer, just because of all those
right.
reasons.
Yeah, it's gonna skew, and even like there are FBAs that I have started this past school year that need to be continued in the new school year. So it's going to be interesting what I see. Like, is there going to be a honeymoon phase, like, you know, starting school and there's going to be less demands, and I don't know, nobody knows who the new teachers are going to be, and it's just going to be a big learning curve for everybody. I have talked to, there is one teacher that I was talking to, just not like kind of more off the record, like, hey, I'm starting an FBA like for a student that you used to have. And so they just kind of generally filled me in on like what they were seeing, and but it was very informal is what I'm looking for. Just a very informal, like I've heard you had them, blah blah blah. And so like they gave me like a little bit of input, but I don't know if it's information that will be needed for when I go to write the report. But yeah, like I'll interview the teachers. I've lately found it more helpful. There's like a template that I'll send out and ask them, you know, like what's the class size? How many aides are there? What behaviors are you seeing, and why do you think they're happening, and what reinforcers do you think would work for this student? So that's been helpful to see and kind of compare across teachers for one specific student. And then yeah, you interview the teachers, you can interview the student if possible, you interview the caregivers, you do your direct observations. And then I'm trying to think what else. I'm like trying to picture the FBA doc in my head. You do the record review. I mean, that's pretty much the bulk of it.
And for school, like you don't need a diagnostic review either. Like you don't need to look over their diagnosis.
Um, you do include that. You do include it, and but their medical diagnosis might not line up with the eligibility that schools can give. So that's a little different. It doesn't really matter what the eligibility is. You can offer a behavior plan or not. And that's really what the FBA is. Like, do we need to, is there a behavior plan in place? Do we need to update the behavior plan? Or do we need to get rid of the behavior plan if there were no behaviors anymore? Or do we need a more specific behavior plan? And what what social emotional goals you can recommend. And then you list like the strategies. So like you in the FBA, you list the strategies that you would put into the behavior plan if you are recommending one.
I think that's super informative and helpful because, I mean, like I said, I don't really know that side. I just know what we do on the insurance side. But so is it usually that like, I mean, you probably see a 50-50 split of like parents requesting the FBAs versus, you know, teachers being like, hey, we're having this difficulty. I don't know what's going on here. And you probably see it. I feel like it's the same as like insurance, where you start to see a spike of them in the beginning of the school year. So like October-ish, November is when you get like an influx of like recommendations and referrals. So we see that on our side, and you probably see that on
Yeah.
yours because honeymoon
Well,
stage,
and
like you
like,
said, is over.
yeah, and like you also have to remember that like, so I've said before that like I work with like the older kids a lot more, and you have to really determine, is this behavior higher than what peers are doing? Because I'll look around the classroom, and if the student that I'm observing is like goofing off or talking out or cursing or whatever, are the other students doing it? That's important. And also, something else to also say is like, and this is what I didn't do in insurance, is seeing how many times they are on task or participating or, you know, like doing school expected behaviors. So like we're looking at that too. And that's something that is a learning curve for me, because it's always like, I'm always looking at the things that they shouldn't be doing, right? And what's the function of that? But also I'm learning that you need to track how many times they're using functional communication, how many times they're following directions, and doing the school expected behaviors too, because
Right.
that has to be in the report as well.
My favorite conversation recently is talking about how similar a child is to their peers and being like, this is what other kids are doing right now. And I hear what you're saying, 110%, but what we also see in the school is this happening, or, this is also what we can see if we look at other similar age peers in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we don't work with typical, I know we use the word typical a
I
lot,
know.
but we don't work with kids that are, what's another word that we can use then? Because I don't really like that.
With a disability.
Yeah, we work with those that have limitations.
Within I guess, can we say we don't work with kids without a medical diagnosis?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, because if you look around, I don't know. I explain it to parents by saying your child has limitations does not mean necessarily that they are disabled in any capacity,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like disability, autism is not a disability in my eyes. It's a limitation. We can always grow skills from there. So
I think the
we're just,
wording is always going to be iffy.
yeah, I don't know if I don't really like, I mean, even Kathy had said that too. She doesn't like the word typical, right? Versus atypical. And I feel like that's just the words that we use now, divergent versus neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I think that we don't get to look at peers that are similar aged that are not our kiddos a lot of times, right? We're constantly looking at the limitations that our kids have and how we can increase that. So when you look at those similar age peers, it's like, oh, yeah, no, that's fine. Oh, that whole class is
Yeah.
running around wild.
Yeah. And I've seen in certain classes, even where the teachers are either more strict or more lenient, or they're like, dude, this is middle school. This is just how it is. And I'm like, you are my people.
Or I think back to when I was in whatever age that is.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, we definitely did that.
Yep. And it's that they don't need a babysitter. It's this is normal.
Yeah.
This is normal. You might not like it, but that's part of being a parent of a teenager or a preteen. And thinking most of my nieces and nephews are in that age range right now. And while they might not behave that way in front of me, I know that with their friends, with specific groups of people, you're gonna act differently. And we all do that. We all change our behavior in different settings.
Yes.
So
yeah, I completely agree with that. So I guess Anne, is there anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of school before I transition to insurance?
yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on parents can request it, or the school can request it. It just, parents or caregivers need to consent to it. So, there's always going to be that piece of consent.
Yeah. And that's the same across even to insurance. You have to
Yeah.
have the consent, especially in writing. We've talked about that.
Yes.
I don't know if we've said that on the podcast before, but that's something that Anne and I have talked about is just the fact of making sure that any sort of change, any sort of documentation of goal writing or any behavior, anything, everything and anything, if you can get it in writing and accepted by the parent, wonderful. Great. Because the more confirmation and more consent we get, the better. And even if it's from the client themselves, because that's even a billion times better if you can get their buy-in. So you want me to move on to insurance?
Yeah, take it away.
All right. So Anne said she has 60 days. We have 30 days. So ideally, ideally we have 30 days, right? I think sometimes it takes us a little bit longer, but usually we have that window to make sure that we can get it done and sent off to insurance as quickly as possible. At least at my company, we have that 30-day window. It's like, all right, you're given the authorization, you are
Yeah, I
complete with
think
the
that's
kiddo.
typical for insurance from what I can remember. It was 30
Yeah,
days.
it's like from your first initial contact with the family until like when you go out and start your billing process, right? Until your completion. So say I started my first day of meeting with a parent tomorrow, I would literally have 30 days from July 22nd to well, I guess you guys are listening, so it would be today, July 22nd. To complete it, right? So like it would be August 22nd-ish. And I usually try and get them done a lot faster than that. I usually meet with the family within 2 weeks of getting connected to them and then get that plan done within a week or so after that. And then, it gets to insurance.
Well, and it's even, yeah, you're right. Like now that I'm thinking back on it, um, it's kind of less than 30 days because if you need edits or if you need your supervisor to look over it and they're like and they have to give you feedback, it's really less than that.
Yeah, and you want to try and have it done as quickly as possible. So they basically say to have it submitted within 30 days to your supervisor. But I tried to personally have it done a little bit faster, just so this way I am making sure that this kiddo that really, if they like, I mean, most kiddos really, really need it immediately, and that's why they're on our wait list. That's why they're, with us or trying to get services. And so trying to churn that out as fast as possible benefits them, right? It helps them in the long run. The quicker you can get them services, the quicker that they're going to start to see that progress and that, the limitations start to kind of dissolve. So, like we had talked about before, that ABC data and that direct observation where you're also doing the assessments with them as well. But before you even do that, I am calling the parents, I'm emailing the parents, and I'm trying to schedule a parent interview where we do a whole, I think it's called family and medical interview.
Okay.
Family FM. So family and medical behavioral interview. There we go. My company has a whole document where we fill out all of this information to help interview interview the family. It talks about, family history. It talks about any medical things that the client has. It talks
Oh
about
yeah. We do look at that too.
yeah, so like it's just a whole long interview process of like, let's just talk about the whole family, let's talk about the whole client. And then we do that, the parent interviews of like the MAS, the QABF, the MAS. So the MAS is going to be your motivation assessment scale, I believe is what it stands for. I use that one
Okay.
a lot. I find that one to be a little more comprehensive when I'm talking with families and my first interview, and then I'll use the QABF going forward, because then I can do the QABF, or I feel like the MAS is a little more, it's easier to just talk to families about. I don't know. That's just personally me, just
Okay.
have that conversation. But I mean, everyone's different. Everyone likes different assessments. I might try and use a different one if I know that, what they reported previously, or, I don't know. I kind of like pick and choose. I'm just like, I like this one today. There's no like rhyme or reason. I don't think. I just think that I
Yeah,
feel more into
there's no
MAS.
really right or wrong. I don't know if there's a specific one in my district that they want us to use. So I just use what I've seen in examples or like old FBAs. I'm like, okay, I know this one's approved of, or like I'll talk to the other BCBAs in the district to see like what they're using to make sure that, it's approved by the county, really.
Yeah. In addition to that, we have specifically with our company, it's called the Quality of Life Survey. And it basically talks about, we have it through our system that we can only send out through our system. I try to do it with families when I go out with them, but a lot of times I just send it ahead of time for them to fill out and I review it later. But it basically just talks about what they can do within different domains and what support level they need currently and how they're doing with it. So like, how well do you agree or disagree with that statement? And then how much support do you provide for them or do they need? So I literally was just doing it on Friday with a parent, and It's really interesting because we didn't have it 6 months ago available. They were
Oh.
redoing it. So the whole time we were going through it I was doing it with the family because I wanted to see what it looked like now. And I also wanted to make sure that they understood what the questions were. And it was the first time doing it. So I started doing it with them and I was like, 6 months ago, this would have been a different score. And she goes, I know. So like, it's wild the
Okay.
progress on some of these kids in 6 months, by the way. But anyway, so we have the quality of life, we have the other parent interview processes, and then we can finally schedule that direct observation. Now, most likely the kiddo has met me because I'm in their home and
Mhm.
there's no going back from there. I don't, I don't mind them knowing who I am before I come in. I kind of prefer it because then they can at least get prepared a little bit. Oh, remember,
Mhm.
Miss Erica who came the other day? Well, she's going to come today and play with you. She's going to get to know you a little bit more. Or, if I can even just like bring them something fun to play with while mom, dad, or caregiver or whomever and I are chatting, then they at least like associate with me fun things. And so when I come in for the actual assessment part where I'm looking at their behaviors and all that stuff, I at least have some sort of rapport already built. So, or I am just allowing them to kind of just have a free for all while I talk to parents, and it's still kind of reinforcing because then they're
Yeah.
having a free for all and nothing's structured. So it all depends. But what else? So yeah, I think it also depends on like location of service of like who you're asking questions to. So I'm always, always, always interviewing the parents and talking to them, but sometimes I'll send stuff off to teachers or to, therapists or to OT, speech to kind of see what's going on and what concerns they have. Um, and also with insurance, your FBA is completed every single year. You are always updating it every single year, whether there is a change, whether there's not a change, you're taking ABC data and you're seeing what behaviors have maybe decreased, have changed in any capacity. And then you're also I think, Anne, you had also mentioned this. You're always going to be adding new ones in or, modifying or anything like that. And it doesn't have to be on that 1 year mark. It can be whenever. And it's
Mhm.
just collect that data and, figure it out from there based upon the function and add in a new behavior and definition. Once again, socially significant, right? So like
Yes.
if it's not, if it's something that's like age appropriate, why are we targeting it? Right?
Right.
Like I get that some things can be weird and gross, like, I don't know, for example, like picking your nose. Well, is every 3-year-old in the classroom picking their nose? Yeah.
Yes.
So are we going to target picking nose for a 3-year-old? Probably not. But, you know, anyways, that's that.
Well, and that, and like, is it interfering with their learning?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's like another thing that like when it comes to any sort of goal writing and obviously behavior modification, we want to look at that. Like, is it really, are you in a classroom? Are you at home? Where are you? Right? Like that's the first thing you need to really consider is like, where are you going to have that location of service? And if you are seeing that other peers, like we kind of previously talked about, are not doing it, then like don't add it.
Right.
Don't target it. Like it's making it more difficult and more confusing for the kiddo in the long run. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if they're like, well, and like if they can speak and are, aware of other kids in the classroom, it's like, well, they're doing it. Why aren't they getting in trouble? It's like,
mhm.
that's a great question.
Yeah.
You
Like I have a
know?
kiddo that doesn't really want to play at recess and would rather just like hang out by themselves and like go under the tunnel. Great, go do that.
Okay.
You have another kiddo possibly joining you or possibly doing it a different day that you're not doing it. So it's like, why would we? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I would love for you to play with your peers, but you're not doing that every single day. And I don't want
Yeah.
to play with my peers every single day.
No, definitely not. Like I can definitely see, you have to know the kid's personality too. Like, do they need that time to just decompress because they're around other kids all day long in schools, And if they need just like time, like they need a minute, they just need a minute to be by themselves and collect their thoughts.
Yep,
Let them do it. It's okay.
yep, yep,
It's okay. Promise.
yeah. And then I also sometimes will have parents even take data when I'm not there, and I'll like leave them a data sheet,
Mhm.
whether it's ABC data, or if it is a tracker of any sort, just to be like, hey, I didn't see anything today, but you're still
Mhm.
reporting that you see these things. And to better help me, I'm gonna leave this here. If you could send this to me as soon as you can, before I complete the report, that would be amazing. So this way I can, refine these definitions. And if you don't see them within that time frame, it's fine. I'm putting it in and we can kind of figure out the definition later. And based upon the information you gave me previously of what you see, I can develop some information upon that. And like I said, it's not like it's written in stone that it can never, ever, ever be adjusted. We can always adjust and change these things. Um, so I mean, I have RBTs helping with the FBA process and even the midway process, because if they're assigned to the client, we're able to like, so say like this is like, we already started services, they've already gotten it, it's not an initial. Well, we need help collecting some of that ABC data, and we need some more information based upon the frequency and stuff. We can always ask our technicians to be like, hey, you're seeing a new behavior. Wonderful. I mean, well, not wonderful. We don't always want like a behavior that we've extinguished to then come up in a different aspect, but it happens.
Yes.
I usually am just like, just take ABC data, I'll look at it. And if I don't see it when I'm out, then just make sure that you've documented it well. And I can kind of just create a definition based upon that information. And then we can start tracking and modifying. So yeah, I don't know if there's any differences in the school, Anne.
No, I mean, I've tried to make my ABC data sheets um, kind of like check boxes so that it's easier, and the RBTs or the aides can like, they kind of know what I'm looking for, because if you don't really have a trained um, aide or tech that like knows like the antecedents should be objective, just like having that like denied access, or there was a transition, or things that you can observe, like they can just check off. I think that can be helpful with like, oh, this is what like this is what they mean by antecedent, and this is what they mean by consequence. So I just try to make like those check boxes so that it's user friendly,
Which I use
or and even
Word
for the
document.
teachers too.
I use documents
Yeah.
still. It's amazing. And I'm just like, my friend Anne made it. I didn't.
Well, and I'm still constantly like updating it, like, oh, I don't like how this is, or if I kind of know the behaviors that we're looking for ahead of time, I'll just have those specific ones and then align so that like whoever's filling it out, even me, can specify uh like to kind of create the definition a little bit better. Like if it's like aggression, or is it like physical aggression, verbal aggression, and differentiating what that looks like. And that's the FBA
I was
process.
trying to think if there was anything else that I was like, I don't think there's anything else to really add here. We've talked a lot about everything FBA, I think.
I think so. I mean, um,
There's a lot of good overlap, I think, between home school
mhm.
type stuff. And, like I said, it's not that I don't go into schools, it's just a different process for insurance versus your side. Because I
Yeah, because
remember,
insurance has different a set of requirements um, that may or may not overlap in a school setting.
yeah, especially like I remember us being contracted to the schools, and it's so different, I'm sure, for
Oh
you
my
in
gosh,
general.
those FBAs were so much shorter than what I'm doing. Like it was literally direct observation and a teacher interview, and then you put the behavior plan in the and the goals into the document, and then that was it.
It was easy. I remember
It was
that.
so easy, and I was like, oh, no problem. And then I get here and I'm like, I didn't have access to like this student's history. And like we like I have to talk to the parents and the caregivers, and that was like we couldn't interview the parents, which was, now looking back, is kind of
Yeah.
you need that information.
Yeah, it's vital. It's vital information to really understand what's going on. I mean, definitely. I like the extensiveness of the plans that I write now, to be honest. Like, I really do enjoy having all of the information and collecting all of that information because it really helps with understanding more of what I'm walking myself into, or, at least trying to like, not walking myself into in a negative capacity. I mean, more of like, how can
It's
I
informational.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's all to help the kiddo or the person at the end of the day. Like it makes more sense when you do these extensive FBAs and behavior plans. And I don't know. I think the more extensive, the more informational yeah, that's the word I was looking for, I think.
Informative, yeah. Yeah.
Informative that it
Informative,
is. Yeah, sure.
informational.
It's helpful all around.
It is.
Now I'm done talking.
And that's our episode on FEAs.
For those of you who are not watching, I just did some weird jig. Take it away, Anne.
Okay, well, hope you enjoyed the episode and learned a little bit. If you want to email us to be on the pod or have feedback, or if you want a specific topic you want us to talk about, our email is ava.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. Our Instagram is ABA Generalized the Pod. You can watch us on YouTube at ABA Generalized. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
Thanks for listening. Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.